Welcome to another episode of Goodbye Bullshit, Hello Happiness. I'm your host, Atousa Raissyan. During these shows, I provide guidance and tools for self-awareness, life experiences, and how to get in touch with yourself and your true nature, which is love, peace, and joy. If you have questions that you would like answered, please go to my website at atousaraissyan.com. Again, that's atousaraissyan.com. You can also find out about my other services on my website. The guidance provided on these shows are just meant to be used as guidance and not take the place of your medical professional guidance and advice. Thank you. For today's episode, I was wondering what to talk about, and a message came to me that we are never alone. And I think many of us on the physical level, especially if we're single parents or we're not in a relationship, we're not in touch with our families, or we don't have our families around us, we feel alone. Or at a certain age, if your loved ones have passed away, you feel alone. That feeling of aloneness is because we're in this physical world and looking at something physical specific. But if we're truly connected to our source inside our hearts, not the physical heart, the spiritual heart, our true nature, our soul, spirit, higher self, consciousness, God self, whatever you want to call it. Once we are seated in that space and move from that space, we find the connection to everything and everyone around us. Even if the feeling of aloneness comes, once we settle into that source, we find out and we experience that connection that we have to life itself. Even if you're sitting alone and there's no one around, you can still feel that connection from your heart to the wind, to the sun, to the moon, and everything around you. Many times we are so focused on one individual or one situation that we forget to open ourselves up to receiving that connection to everything and everyone. And the reason that we are super hyper focused on one individual or situation or person is because that's the place we feel safe. We feel like we can be ourselves with them. So we focus on that one connection or couple of connections that we feel safe. But if we step out of that and again come from a place of source, higher consciousness, we feel that connection, we open ourselves to experience that connection with other beings and non-beings, again, wind, sun, the snow, the light, everything. So take time and truly sit and see, are you opening yourself to receive that connection to everyone and everything? And this experience can go even beyond connection with other humans or your pets, animals. This connection can also be felt if you're an artist and you are playing music instrument or your artwork, and you've been using that instrument and art in the way that it's supposed to be used, meaning a lot of times as musicians, as artists, you get stuck into that, well, it's got to be played a certain way. It's got to be done a certain way. And even if you open yourself up beyond that it has to be done a certain way, connect with the instrument, connect with the sound, connect with the paint, the paintbrush, the canvas. If it's photography, connect with the scene that you're at. that you're trying to capture. And you are going to feel that love. But in order to feel that love, you got to open yourself. You got to be willing to receive it. You got to be vulnerable. From that place of vulnerability, if you can stand in that place of fear and be vulnerable, that openness happens naturally. That openness comes about, and you can experience a different way. Or perhaps you're even someone that says, I enjoy being alone. But the aloneness I'm talking about here is not physical alone, is that connection, the connection to everything and everyone. To be able to go inside in that place, in that space where you're just experiencing life. Everything that shows up, you see it for its purpose, for its experience, and the guidance to come and stay and just be a witness of what's happening and not get into the stories and the emotions and the thoughts that are coming up. Again, I want to talk about the music instrument just because I had a client recently and they know how to play different instruments and they're very good at it. And they haven't been getting the enjoyment that they used to get out of playing instruments. And the reason was that every time they approach an instrument is from a place of musician, this identity, this persona, this personality of the musician. And it was interesting that when I gave them an instrument that they weren't used to playing, or they didn't even consider the instrument really, they didn't have any emotion or preset rules or thoughts. So they connected with this instrument immediately, and it brought them peace and joy. But then when I gave them the guitar, the first thing they said is like, oh, I got to tune it. And my response was, what if you don't tune it? What if you just play this out of tune? What if you just don't even play the strings? And that's the connection. Whenever you connect everything in your life, everything, even objects in your home, there's molecules, atoms, things in there that's making you be able to see that object, to have a physical presence. And if you connect with that energy of it, you can feel its essence. You can connect with it and use it in so many different ways and connect from your heart space and play with it. So why don't we make these connections? Because we're living the life from our mind perspective, from our thought perspective, from our identities perspective. And we're trying to keep these identities and personas alive. And keeping them alive meaning that being attached to our roles as a mom, as a dad, as a friend, as a spouse, as a kid, as a child. All those things, we are attached to it, and that's how we show up in our lives. Instead of showing up as who we are, our existence, our source, higher consciousness, God, again, whatever you want to call that space. I've started to use space before thought. And that is a space where you don't let your thoughts, your identities, your personas to take over. Rather, you are showing up as the space, in the space, and moving naturally from the space. And maybe take a day and say, what if I don't think for today? And every time you come to think about something, it's like, oh, I got to do this. Your thoughts are taking you to do something, or your thoughts are telling you how to do it. take a pause, connect with your breath, connect with your heart, come back to this space that is you, that's your true essence, beyond your identities and roles and personas, beyond the person that's been hurt, beyond the fear, just as this space, and see what is the natural movement. If you're playing an instrument, hold that instrument from this space, connect with it, and see what feels fun. Again, coming back to the instrument, if you give a kid that has no idea what a note is, what are they supposed to even do with a guitar, a toddler, give them a guitar. And you see, like, if you give them a toy guitar, if they've seen something on TV, they try to imitate it. But even if they haven't seen it, they will try to figure it out naturally and make sounds out of it and use the whole guitar as a way to make sound and music. And that's the approach that if we give to life from that perspective, that if I didn't know anything about life, let all those thoughts that my parents and ancestors have told me how to be, how to behave, if I let all of it go, how would I approach today? How would I approach this instance? Because growing up, we've always been told, do this, don't do that. Be this way, don't be this way. And this should, need to, have to, must, always gets us to live in the physical as a person, as an identity, rather than move naturally from this space. So again, I invite you to this space of awareness, this space where your breath is natural. You're not telling your lungs how to breathe. The space where your heart is beating naturally. It can beat faster, slower, doesn't matter. Your breath can be shallow or deep, doesn't matter. Because when you sit in this space and you're just aware of it, everything naturally calms down. Everything naturally finds its rhythm. And that is the rhythm of life, rhythm of being, your rhythm of how you show up for others in your life, for everything in your life. And it doesn't matter if it's the same or different as someone else's rhythm, because at our core, we're all the same energy, same being, same source. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for joining me today. And if you have questions that need answering, please share them on my website, atousaraissyan.com. Under services, you'll find Goodbye Bullshit. If you like Goodbye Bullshit, Hello Happiness, please share with your friends and subscribe and like and review us. Thank you.